The Podcasting Dead is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Make sure to subscribe for more podcasts. And while you're at it, drop us a like. If you want to help support the channel and have access to extra content, secret contests, and more, make sure to search for us on Patreon. Patreon.com/thepodcastingdead.
Welcome to the Weird Wednesday podcast. I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead, as our snazzy little intro might have told you. We are every Wednesday talking about something odd, and we're going back to rediscuss something we already talked about because we've got some interesting new points. JP's got some cool new experiences, and we've learned a little bit more about them. I'm talking about Skinwalkers. If you want to listen to the original podcast where we talked about what they are and the legends and all of that, you can find that on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to this via something like SoundCloud, iTunes, or whatnot, I don't think that it's available, but you can find us on YouTube and go back through our videos and find it that way. But so we're talking about Skinwalkers, and just a quick rundown: Skinwalkers are supposedly these Native American shaman that had to commit an unspeakable act, which is usually murdering someone that they love, in order to gain these shape-shifting powers. Now, when they gain these powers, they get almost superhuman levels of strength, speed, and endurance and durability. Pretty much become supervillains. But in doing this, they can also form to the shape of any animal, but they're not a perfect version of that animal. Also, this is really, I think, prevalent in Navajo folklore. And feel free to correct anything I'm saying in the comments section. I'm not a cryptozoologist or anything. I'm just someone who's, listened to a lot of podcasts and videos about it and yada, 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 witness testimony and stuff. But also, when they take the shape of another animal, something's always off. Like a lot of times it's reported they have either like glowing amber eyes, or they have the animal will have very human looking eyes. And a lot of times, like for instance, the animal won't have a tail, as what they say is a telltale sign of a skinwalker. And the only known way to kill a skinwalker is to say its real name, which how the hell are you supposed to know that? But so there you go. I apologize for throwing that much at you at once. Just trying to give you a quick rundown in case you don't feel like backtracking, listening to the other podcast, but you want to enjoy this one. Now you know going forward what a skinwalker is. And a lot of reports, JP, are of it having antlers. That's the most coyotes and deer. What looks to be a deer walking on its hind legs, or what I am seeing the most witness reporting. You know what I mean? Like I listen to a lot of like top 10 scariest skinwalker stories. I comb Reddit, and everything that I'm saying is coming from what I've read. And JP, what are you thinking? You said you thought you had an encounter or something, right?
Well, I went on that hunting expedition in the mountains at the border of Virginia, West Virginia.
Well, for those that are just joining the podcast, maybe you've never, you just found this on the internet. Thanksgiving weekend, JP went and spent some time in the mountains next to West Virginia. Spent 2 nights out there, right, with a buddy that was doing some hunting and stuff. So that's what he's referring to. That wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't. And I was telling my friend about the Skinwalkers. He'd never heard of them. He doesn't give any credence to any of the cryptids, be it Sasquatch, Nessie, none of that stuff.
None of them?
None of them, dude. I even explained to him about the jawbone from Gigantopithecus, that if whether you believe in Sasquatch exists today, they at least have in the fossil record a jawbone of this prehistoric creature.
That was pretty much Bigfoot, right?
Right, but he just scoffs at it and says that one jawbone,
Does he really scoff at it?
Yeah, he said that one jawbone can't just validate an entire species of creatures. And he's entitled to his opinion, he's a smart guy, but he was really scoffing at the Skinwalkers, and I just told him, dude, I mean, like, I was going to bring this up. I didn't really want to get into it because one of the things that lures them to you is speaking of them.
Right.
Am I correct about that?
You're right. Talking about them brings them
and I mean,
from far distances, from what I've been told.
He brought a lot of firepower, but I was just like, man, I mean, they're essentially invincible to an extent. I mean, you can't,
more or less.
they
Yeah.
don't respond to earthly weapons like you would think. And he scoffs and he scoffs and he jokes and he says this, that, and the other. He doesn't believe anything other than angels and demons and the Lord God, and all this stuff.
I mean, that could all still be tied together. They use dark magic to gain these powers. I mean, maybe a demon, you know what I'm saying? Just hypothetically speaking. I mean, maybe a demon possesses them to give them this ability.
Not in his mind, though. But anyway, we settle in for the night. We're in our tent. It was brutal. It was below freezing. We didn't have any mattress pad. It was just a tent. Sleeping bags on the ground. Anyway, it was rough. But he says throughout the night, I mean, he had to just grab his Glock at one point. It sounded like something was just making its way around the deer camp. Making these obnoxious kind of gurgling noises around the truck and all this stuff. And he said it eventually subsided, but it just made me wonder, if it possibly had something, because we didn't see any kind of. We got up that morning, there were no tracks around. It wasn't a bear or anything like this, and it just makes me wonder because they're so kind of. I feel like they wouldn't leave something behind that you could possibly identify and track them with. I don't know, but I was just like, dude, I told you, don't be scoffing at the Skinwalkers. You might wake up and roll over and see something that looks like me but isn't exactly me, and next thing you know, it's eating your face off.
Well, and that's the thing, man, is that Skinwalkers can take the shape of more than, you're very right. It could take the shape of it. Now, different conflicting folklore, as far as it's been retold, obviously. I've never heard much folklore from someone who's actually Navajo, but this has all been retold by people on YouTube pretty much. But for some people say they take they can repeat the last things said by their victims is what I've heard a lot of. But I've also heard a lot of stories of them taking the form and voice of someone who is very much still alive. So I mean, it's very much the fact that what a Skinwalker could have done is told your buddy, said his name and sounded like you, and he would have came out the tent and saw you standing in the woods. And I mean this with, how much I think of you, but you're a weird guy. So, I mean, you standing in the middle of the woods is not out of the realm of possibility. No. So he probably would think, what is JP tripping balls again? And he would walk out there to be like, JP, what are you doing? And you would lead him into the woods, only it's not you. It's a Skinwalker. You're back at deer camp. Well, I'm not going to say fast asleep, but, trying to go to sleep in your sleeping bag. Yeah. So, he's lucky. And it is interesting that you guys spent the night talking about them, and then he heard that. Obviously, it was probably just a coyote, because a lot of times when a new camp's introduced, animals are curious. There are smells. There are new things that draw them in. A lot of times they're harmless. They sniff around the camp, and for all they know, you're not even there.
Which, like I said, though, I mean, there were no kind of tracks left around. We had all our food sealed up in the truck. It was very, very mysterious to me. And he recants it and all this stuff, but not recants what he heard, but he
shoots down the Skinwalker thing, right?
Exactly, precisely.
Well, and then odds are it was. And when I say that they don't know you're there, I mean obviously for those, some people I feel like I hate having to feel like I have to backtrack on everything I say because people on the internet nitpick every little thing you say.
Some of them do. Yeah.
Obviously the animal knows you're there because they can smell you. But what I'm saying is they don't know that you're necessarily right there. They just see this camp, and a lot of times they smell food that you've cooked or things that are new and interesting. So of course they sniff around. And odds are what it was just a coyote or I mean a more possible. It could have been a bear.
Possibly.
Which but. I don't know. It is interesting that you talked about that because, I mean, as much as I've done, as much as I've been out, I've really never had, other than that one experience I told on one of our old podcasts about being chased by that weird howling sound. I haven't really had that many, scary experiences in the woods. Mm-hmm. Our pal Derek Patterson, a longtime listener, told me that he thought that I was being chased away by a Sasquatch, not stalked by a Skinwalker.
That's interesting, man. I know they if you encroach, especially where they have their young, they won't necessarily harm you.
I was gonna say it seems like the Sasquatch doesn't isn't really intent on harm. I think, again, Derek was telling me there's only like 2 reported cases of attacks. Most of the time, they'll just throw rocks or screech at you, just try to scare you away. It's almost like they are smart enough to know that you don't mean harm to the young, but they don't want you around them.
Right, exactly.
Kind of like if dogs wander into your yard, you don't hate dogs, you don't know, but if you have kids, you're going to chase them off because you don't know what those dogs are going to do.
Yeah.
But
there are forces in the wilderness, man, that we can't explain, and they're still out there,
Now, you didn't sleep well, so you didn't hear any of this sniffing or anything around camp?
I didn't hear any
or
of
were
it,
you
no.
just a little bit too stoned to be comprehensive?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I knocked myself out with several substances because I knew it was going to be a rough sleep. But no, I didn't hear anything. But my pal Josiah, I mean, he even said he'd be willing to call in and give a testimonial. Like I said, he's not going to give any credence to Skinwalkers, but he said it was a frightening, somewhat experience.
Oh, I'm sure it was an animal. I mean, it was probably a coyote or a bear, you never know. It could have been a wild dog. And you say there were no tracks, but
there were no tracks, and nothing was disturbed around the truck. To me, I think we were being stalked by something a little bit supernatural.
And what makes you think that? Just the no signs that it left behind?
There was no signs, just the nature, it's here, and all of a sudden it's, on the other side. And he said he said at first, he was like, well, maybe this is a bear, but it was almost just like, it wasn't the same kind of vocalization that you would hear from a bear. You see what I mean?
One account that I heard of a skinwalker was pretty wild, and they all are, but this one tripped me out. And I don't know why, I love when I'm riding in my car, I've gotten to the point where I almost don't even like listening to music anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I like to find these things on YouTube, like top 10 Wendigo encounters, top 10 Skinwalker encounters, top 10 Sasquatch encounters, just where people give testimony. And I'm not dumb. I know that the vast majority are probably a complete crock of crap, just someone looking for some attention. But there was one where this guy was talking about, and I apologize for not knowing whose story this was. This was read from Reddit, I believe, and or either that or he sent it in. But so I'm sorry, I don't know. He can't give the credit to who put this story on the internet. But he was saying basically in a nutshell that him and his wife were camping one weekend, and he heard sniffing similar to you did, the way you did, and all of a sudden something starts kind of pushing its head into the tent, but like through the side. It starts licking it as well, because basically his head was pressed against the tent. It was a small little tent, and this thing starts licking his head through it. And so he's thinking coyote or, wolf, something. And finally his wife wakes up, and she's, understandably kind of freaked out. So finally he gets his courage up, and he grabs something, and he unzips the tent. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't see anything. Nothing. There's nothing around the tent. So they go back to bed, and they're like, whatever. So then the next morning they go outside, and there are human footprints leading up to the tent and away from the tent. Now explain that, which it's interesting because some reports say that the skinwalkers shapeshift. Some say they just wear the skin of the animals. So I don't know. You've got so many different supposed
I think the truly ancient
backstories.
ones. I think the truly ancient ones that have been around since time immemorial can actually shapeshift. And like I said, my buddy, the way he described it, and he didn't say this, but it almost sounds like it was something trying to imitate a bear of the woods. You see what I mean?
Or maybe it just was a bear.
I really don't think it was. I think he would have got to clapping on it if it were.
But that's the thing. He didn't know if it was a bear or not. So he you said he would have got to clapping on it if it were a bear. But why? So you think perhaps the skinwalker came to the camp and took the form of a bear, was imitating a bear to get him to come out to basically shoo it off or shoot it or whatever, and then it was going to take him.
Exactly, because the skinwalker knew his intention for being in the wilderness. He wanted to take on wild game. And, I mean, you can't really do so much to imitate a deer. You can't really shoot at a deer after midnight, after nightfall. So, yeah, it came around the camp imitating a black bear, hoping to lure my friend out and then to use my friend's form to seduce me.
It is interesting that you were the believer in a sense. You were more open to the idea than he was. He was the non-believer and was kind of laughing at and, shrugging off skinwalkers. And he's the one that heard sounds and you didn't. You get what I'm saying?
I really think that's the reason they chose him, is because he was so quick to scoff at their existence, disrespecting them.
I see the picture in my head now, like you're sleeping and you hear, JP, come here. And you open your tent and there's your buddy standing in the middle of the bush. And you're like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, come here, I got to show you something. Thinking maybe there's a deer, which I don't think it's legal there. It's not legal pretty much anywhere that I know of to shoot deer at night. But,
right.
But you're thinking, you don't hunt much. You don't know that, right? So you're thinking maybe he's got a big buck he's about to shoot. And so you go to walk, and then the next thing you know, he starts walking. And before long, you're getting a little frustrated because you're like, why won't you just stop so I can catch up to you? And then, bam, he turns around, and he's just this evil skinwalker, and he disembowels you. Because I've heard, there's different reports of like what skinwalkers want to do with you. Like, you never know, do they eat? I don't think they eat humans mostly. I think a lot of times they just kill you or they poison you. I mean, it's different reports of what they do, but I almost wonder, like, what will they do? They always are trying to lure you away.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're so supernatural in nature, interdimensional. I don't know if they have the same kind of, like, sustenance needs that we do, or that something in nature does. I don't know.
Could be like It. What is it? I believe on It, he doesn't have to eat. He just enjoys the taste of humans. He exists kind of outside of time.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And sorry, that's slight spoilers, but my God, it's been out for I don't know how long now. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
need to watch
deal with
the
it.
new ones. I would like to.
The new one, the first one was really good. I hadn't seen the second one, but from what I have read, it doesn't seem like it was received as well as the first one. But I'm going to watch it and have my own opinion. But I don't know. What do you think the skinwalkers do with people?
I think they have to eliminate them, so to speak, to assume their form in an indefinite state. Kind of like the liquid metal T-1000. It kills its person and then assumes their form. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that they.
So you think they have to kill a person before they take their form?
I don't think they have to do that, but I think if they want to be able to manipulate this person's form on a long-term basis, that they do have to kill them and take their life fluid from them.
Well, it's smart if they kill you first, because, I mean, what if you guys had just been talking about that? So your buddy could have seen you standing out in the bush trying to lure him out and been like, hold on 1 second. Looked into the tent, saw you laying there and be like, ha-ha, not today, Skinwalker. So perhaps they do want to kill you to take your form. And maybe because you were so open to the thought, you weren't so dismissive with the Skinwalker. You kind of showed more respect to what they were. Maybe they were going to ask you to join them.
Yeah, most shapeshifters, I think they generally do kill their, unless they want to maintain a psychic link to you, for your memories and stuff.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because some Skinwalkers are reported to be able to possess you, to take control of you.
Right, yeah.
Which leads me to wonder if they actually do take well, no, because people have seen both. Never mind. I'll say maybe they don't actually shapeshift. Maybe your friends are trying to lure you out into the woods because they're being controlled and they don't remember it. But a lot of times they'll see someone turn around and run back, and that person is back at camp. Like, where the hell did you go?
I think they have so many capabilities, man. I mean, like, they've existed on this earth a lot longer than we have. You see what I mean?
I don't know why. I find it interesting. I mean, I don't know that I'm kind of more in line with your buddy. I don't know that. Though I think the scariest one, and I don't know why this creeps me out, the scariest Skinwalker story that I have heard was where these people were riding home. I think it might have just been two people, and they're coming home from work or whatever. One guy's giving the other a ride home, and like in the road, there's what looks to be a pack of coyotes.
Yeah.
So they slow down and go around them, and all of a sudden, as they're pulling off, they notice one coyote stands up on his hind legs and then starts chasing them. And they said that when they had tried to go around them, they noticed that their faces didn't look right. Like it was a coyote's face, but it didn't look right. They were human-looking eyes, and it just looked like something trying to be a coyote, but it wasn't. And then, of course, it stands up on its hind legs. And they said, that thing chased them for a good up to, 40 miles an hour or more, keeping up with the vehicle on two legs. Yeah. And then what's interesting is he takes his buddy home or whatever, and he goes home. And that night, they both heard talking outside their window. Someone trying to coax them out of the house.
God in heaven.
So, I don't know, man. That's the thought of that freaks me out.
It's so freaky, man. It's so freaky. And like I said, I do think these things have capabilities beyond our comprehension. And I know that night there was no animal around our deer camp.
It very well could have been, though. You got to think. What did you cook anything on a fire?
We didn't really cook anything. We heated up some like MREs next to the fire.
Well, there you go.
It wasn't like burning meat or anything.
Right, but I mean that warm food smell travels. I mean, you got it in the air, and the wind probably took it. And an animal, you're in a forest. When you're in the woods, you have to realize you're in these. It's not as these animals see you. You might not see the animals, but the animals are all around. That's their home. So, I mean, the likelihood that a coyote or a bear or, a bobcat, I mean, it's a ton of different animals it could have been. Are there mountain lions in that area?
No.
No?
Well, maybe.
It's a number of different animals that could have just been curious. They smelled something new and it smelled like food, so they followed the scent. It led them to your camp, and they didn't see you guys out there, so they decided to sniff around for a bit, and once they didn't find anything. Now, what is interesting is a lot of time, though, bear, you said you kept the food. See, I do a bear bag. I walk, 100 yards from I don't know if I go quite 100, but I go a ways away from the camp, put the food in this supposed to be scent-locked bag and hoist it up in a tree.
Right.
But you guys kept your food in the truck.
Yeah, it was sealed up and in the truck. Yeah.
Which animals can smell, they could still smell, just like I know that bag's not 100% smell-proof. I'm just hoping it kills it a bit to where it's not as easy to find. But I mean, a lot of times though, it is cool with bears. You ought to tell them to check on his truck. A lot of times when people have reported a bear into their camp, especially after food, if the food's in a vehicle, the bear tries to get into the vehicle because it can smell that it's there. You ought to have him look around his vehicle and see if there are any scratch marks that he didn't notice. I mean, not deep claw. I'm talking like just a couple of,
I would. He would have heard from from his papa if there was any scratches on it.
Oh, that was at his papa's truck.
His papa's truck, yeah. But no, I'd bet the family farm that it was no kind of animal of the wilderness.
You don't have a family. You don't have a family farm.
It was something of a supernatural means.
You don't even know that you believe in the supernatural.
I know that the Skinwalkers do exist.
It's interesting to think of them being interdimensional beings.
Well, yeah, like I said, they've explored our realm since before we were here.
Well, no. So the common accepted folklore is that they are once shaman who then committed a horrible act to get these powers. Are you trying to say they've been here longer than humans?
Yes.
So you don't accept the traditional folklore.
I think the entity that possessed the shamans of old have been here far longer.
So what you're saying is you think that there are, and I know that's annoying that I'm constantly saying. So what you're saying, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. But what you're saying is that the powers they get come from what you think are entities that have been here longer than we have.
Exactly.
So when they make this sacrifice and do this ritual to get these powers, a spirit goes into them.
Basically, they open the door to these things to allow them to bond with them. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So you feel as if you've had a Skinwalker encounter.
I feel as though something I can't explain did invade our deer camp. I won't go as far as to say what, but I mean, I think it does somewhat fit the bill for the Skinwalker. So
I truly do feel as if it was probably just a regular animal. I feel like it was just a...
Like I said, I would...
Because there are lots of animals in the woods, and just like us, they're hungry, they're curious. I mean, you're in their habitat. So when you go out there, you are, especially overnights, man. A lot of animals do most of their activity at night.
Dude, I would rope the moon if it was an actual animal. I don't think it was.
I think it was. I mean, if you were to tell me that there was a voice associated with it, or something a little more supernatural. But I mean, what you're telling me just sounds like an animal that caught a whiff of something at your camp and was curious, or just was strolling through the woods and was like, I've never seen this before. So they decided to sniff around a little bit. And once they didn't find anything, they pieced out.
Yeah.
But you seem pretty convinced.
I'm pretty convinced, yeah.
Oh, well, you know what? You and I are doing an overnight soon, and we've talked a bit about Skinwalkers. I'm hoping one does not come after us, which I think a lot of times they're more reported, Arizona, more desert area. I'm not saying there aren't reports from our, from here in the South, but I do think that most reports come more Colorado, Nevada, that part of the U.S.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. We will see. But what do you think? Skinwalkers, real, fake, folklore? Should we stop talking about them? Are they going to come after us? Let us know your thoughts. I've always found this interesting. Whether, I believe in it or not, it's irrelevant. I find the subject to be interesting. So if you believe in it or you have some things to add or some warnings, like you guys better quit before, whatever, let me know. I've always been interested in supernaturals. And JP here thinks he had an experience. So let us know. Did JP have a Skinwalker experience, or did he just, get visited by a very common animal of the woodland?
No.
If you were to tell me I do remember, I'll close out with this. I do remember being a kid. I don't know if this is a fabricated memory. Sometimes you read stories and those stories get interwoven with your childhood memories. So I don't know if this came from like scary stories to tell in the dark, 'cause they did have a story about human footprints in the snow, and I actually think it was about the Wendigo. But I do feel like I remember being a kid and there being like bare human footprints in our yard, like walking through the field and into the yard and back into the woods. And as a kid, I remember thinking Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because it was a giant foot. It was bigger than any of our feet. So I'll have to ask my dad about that again. That might just be reading the Wendigo as a kid, and then, or whatever the scary stories to tell in the dark, Wendigo stories called, and then maybe that's got. But I feel like I remember that. I feel like that was a pretty vivid memory.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
What do you think, Sasquatch or Skinwalker? If I did experience that,
it could have been shooing you away from its pod. That is
what? What are you talking about? It's chewing you away from its pod.
Chewing you.
Chewing you? Oh, I thought you said it's chewing you away from its pod.
No, it wouldn't chew on you.
So you think it was a set? Well, but it didn't come after us. It was just footprints in the yard.
No, just kind of, you see what I mean?
I don't see what you mean.
It meant harm is what I'm implying.
Right. I would just take it was being curious, or maybe it just was traveling through, or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's going to wrap it up for this Skinwalker podcast. Let us know what you think again in the comments below. And if you're new to this channel, subscribe for more content. We're available on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all kinds of places. And if you are so inclined, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thepodcastingdead. We do behind-the-scenes podcasts there. We have secret contests. We've been keeping up pretty well of having at least 2 podcasts a week on there that are only available to our patrons. And those are more behind the scenes. I mean, they can go anywhere from supernatural to partying to inner struggles. The conversations just go all over the place.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, so make sure to consider for as little as $1 a month, you can be part of the fun. In the meantime, we will catch you tomorrow on Patreon if you are a patron, or if not, we will catch you Friday for Mail Call.
Yes.
I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead.